the last thing I wanted to say was 2026 looks like it's going to be even a harder year to buy a car. You know, when you look at what's changing, the mandates are pushing manufacturers to create more and more electric vehicles. So some of these special cars that we like are going away. Some of the fun drivetrains are going away. Well, you also think that you'll just buy a used vehicle. But guess what? 78% of car dealers right now are stressed out about 2026 inventories. That's right, stock is dropping and dropping fast. People are holding on to their vehicles. They're sticking around a lot longer. People don't want to sell their stuff. Because why? Well, a lot of people certainly still aren't adopting EVs. And while 48% of buyers are looking for some form of hybrid, the fact is, doesn't matter if you're looking at a hybrid Honda or Toyota or any other hybrid, they're harder to come by. The inventory is dwindling. More and more consumers are looking for 3 to 5 year old used vehicles because it's sort of that sweet spot. Maximum service life, lowest cost available, and sort of meeting that all in the middle. A lot of people want a good used car, but are they going to pay? What's new for 2026? What's going on? Well, I've been looking at the market, and according to many dealers, they're worried about market. Their profits are dwindling, drying up, because they're going to be fighting for the same old song and dance. They're all going to be looking for the same used cars. They're all going to be hunting at the dealers, the auctions. They're all going to be chasing the same customers that might have that trade-in. And unfortunately, that just means inventory is getting tighter and tighter. While they claim profits are going to be a little tighter for them, I don't know. What does tightening of profits mean? Usually suggests lower prices for the consumer. I mean, if there's one thing that I would say, 2026, I don't see prices getting cheaper. I'll be quite honest with you. I've been in the business a long, long time. Okay, I've been selling cars, buying, fixing cars. I've owned hundreds of cars myself. And I know what it takes to buy get a good deal, but I also know what drives the dealers. I know what keeps them in business, and it's profits. See, they're not selling you a car on good faith. They're not selling you a car because they like your hair. They're not selling you a car cheap because they think that you'll come back. They'll tell you that. They'll tell you that as long as you send a referral and bring more customers in, that's all they care. But we all know that's a song and dance. In 2026, we see it shaping up to be a whole new slew of challenges. I mean, first of all, something that started in 25, this whole talk about, taxation, a lot of the taxes on some of these vehicles that are being mandated or manufactured, tariffs. Vehicles that were built, for example, a lot of Jeep products, Stellantis products, some Ford, GM built in, whether it's Canada, Mexico, a lot of those vehicles now are hitting US soil. But the ones that are currently being built in those other two countries are still subject to some form of tariff, whether it's parts, the manufacturing. Also, you think, I'll get into some of the Euro cars. Well, guess what? Some of those are going to slowly start tacking on prices. We know that manufacturers like Audi and Mercedes-Benz have said, look, we're not going to pass the cost directly to the consumer, but we also know that there's enough margin in there initially. The profit margin's substantial, but they can't hold on forever. And we know that these prices, I would strongly anticipate, prices on most European brands are likely to go up. I mean, we also notice Audi and some of those brands from VAG have reduced the amount of inventory that they're sending to North American soil because they don't want to deal with the tariffs. They'd rather slowly filter and trickle in the inventory rather than hit them with a slew of products. So ultimately, what are you looking at? New cars, used cars, it doesn't matter. The bottom line is what I see in 2026, it's going to be harder and harder to get good inventory. You want a Japanese car, you want something from Asia, think Hondas, Toyotas. Well, they're full of recalls right now. I can't even think of a Toyota right now that is really worth owning. I mean, even the Toyota Camry, which is a tried and true and quite a reliable unit, unfortunately it's gone hybrid. So you can't even get a new ICE vehicle from Toyota. Honda, you know what? They're still dealing with some of their own struggles with a 1.5 four-cylinder. They have all that oil and fuel problems. And of course, GM having issues. Same with a lot of these other brands. Mazda, cylinder deactivation on their base trim 2.5s. See, even that, they're bringing even some of that technology that's causing problems for some of these manufacturers. They're bringing it to the brands that are currently doing the right things, giving us a simpler product for a value add price. but doing it in a way that's reliable so we can hold on to them. But see, that's the catch. And that's why a lot of people are holding on to their old inventory. Hence, why inventory levels on the used car sector are dropping. And the dealers are saying that they're freaking out right now. Honestly, they're spazzing out. I saw one guy having a shit conniption. I was talking to a bunch of salespeople there the other day at a local franchise dealer. And one of the sales guys, he was kicking the wall. This guy was freaking out because he was worried about trying to pay his own bills, trying to feed his own family, and realizing that hearing the news, reading the rhetoric, what's going on for coming up for 2026, meaning that his primary objective is selling used cars is going to be subject to inventory. And that's what they're saying. There's a lot of dealers right now that are saying they've lost sales. They've lost potential customers, not because the customers weren't there, but because the inventory wasn't there. They couldn't satisfy the need. So it's like the old supply and demand, right? High supply, low demand, lots of inventory means good pricing. You go the other way. Strong demand, low inventory, you get a buying frenzy and people are going to be overpaying. And see, where a lot of these dealers are saying, well, they're worried about small margins, I tend to think the other way. I truly believe that you're going to start to see a lot of these dealers jacking up prices, especially on sought-after models, quality products, maybe a 3 or 4-year-old vehicle, slap a little CPO on there, charge another 20-30% on top. Some of these vehicles we've seen, Toyota have been doing that, Highlanders and 4Runners. They've been tacking extra cost upon cost adders. I came across a Toyota, what the hell was it? It was a Toyota RAV4 Prime a couple years back, and I walked into the dealer when you couldn't get hybrid because what was going on for a while there during the chip shortage. And this is going to repeat itself. See, because hybrids are sought after in a used market and you can't get them. But what Toyota was doing, and I came across a dealer here in town, in my city. I even had the invoice. I asked them to print it off for me. The one thing I'll give them, and attaboy, let's be honest. I mean, these guys, they're talking on both sides of the mouth at the same time. But this guy was saying, the base price of this vehicle was something like, $52,000. But they were charging $75,000. I said, how did you get there? Well, taxes and all those fees. But also, we put on paint protection film, we put on floor mats, roof rack, and a few other extras. I said, you put on this PPF and undercoating and floor mats to the tune of, it was about $14,000 in extras. But there was almost nothing. It was all fluff and filth flounder. There was probably $1,500 in actual add-ons, but it was so buffered up. And then I said, well, what the hell is this? He said, well, that's all we've got. We've only got this one model. We can't get our hands on any. So that's what it is. We pre-outfit them, and that's what was going on. But I think, truly, I believe that's what we're going to start to see in those sought-after spaces. Now, EVs are going to continually being difficult in pushing. Now, have you heard the latest news? Ford, they're giving up the ghost. Allegedly, the latest news is the F-150 Lightning. Yes, their only EV pickup truck. Ford was touting it was going to be the destroyer of all Cybertruck. It was going to be the big grandpappy of electric trucks. It was going to do all the things true truck owners wanted. And then truck owners started to use them and realized, I'm towing my trailer. I can only get this thing, 300 kilometers, 250 miles down the road. That's not helping me very much, especially as a contractor where I've got to go to multiple sites. I got to do a lot of work. I got to tow some trailers. And they realized range was the shits. The price of these vehicles were extremely high. And even with incentives, the F-150 Lightning wasn't selling all that well. For a while there was mass inventory. And it wasn't until they were really slashing prices that they were starting to sell some of them, but nobody's buying them. I even have a friend that just bought himself a brand new Mustang Mach-E. But he did so under the pretense of an $18,000 discount off a sticker. He ended up getting it for 2/3, almost half of the price of a brand new one with full MSRP sticker price. He got a massive discount. He almost couldn't refuse. Now, because if it's his third or fourth vehicle in the house, he could tolerate it. It's a great runabout for daily commute. He even openly admitted he had to go out of province to pick this up, but he was probably never going to take it on the highway again. It was going to be a city dweller. But he got himself a magnificent deal because this is what's starting to happen. The EV market is going to be absolutely just cat and dog, and it's going to be just aggressive, you know? And so this is what we're going to see more of. We're going to see more incentives on these EVs. Tax credits are gone, so it's going to be a hard decision. You're getting a discount here, but you're losing on the tax credit, so you're still not necessarily going to flip a lot of people. But the EV market is still going to be trying to toss out there all of this inventory. Hybrids, more and more hybrids hitting the market. Less and less and less internal combustion that doesn't have a CVT. You know, Nissans, Subarus, they have some of the most garbage transmissions with these continuously variable transmissions. There's no way that anyone's going to tell me that that's a quality gearbox. It's not. Nissan, they don't last very long. From everybody I've talked to, at some point they get squealing, howling, smoke, check engine light problems. Big maintenance costs. CVT transmissions are putting in everything, all these little cars these days. So to find a good quality internal combustion vehicle that's NA, that has a reliable torque converter auto that isn't braking like the 10-speed in Ford and GM is actually very, very hard to find. So as we transition into 26, we're looking at more and more problems with these full-size trucks, Toyota and their Tundras. Problems, nobody's buying that. Nobody's really buying the 6.2s from GM or the 5.3s. Now, you know, allegedly GM's saying, look, we're going to have to scrap this. The oiling problems, the supply chain with the crankshaft issues, the rocker lifter problems, the 10-speed autos, we're pulling out our damn freaking hair. But they're coming out with something. Apparently, they're coming out with bigger engines, more bold, more powerful. They say reliable, but to me, that's a marketing tactic. Unless you get down to the bare fundamentals, get back to the oiling that works, heavier oil instead of using this piss water oil that they're using in a lot of these manufacturers these days. That's a contributing factor. Quality control and supply chain is a big factor. And until they get to the root of the issue, you can build another engine, but you're still going to have the same problem if you're having it done at the same factory. See, at the end of the day, what we're going to see is a continuation of what's left in the internal combustion space. Full-size trucks, small trucks are having issues. And my own personal favorite, when you look at some of the small trucks, you say to yourself, okay, maybe I don't need a big truck. A lot of buyers are saying, screw that, I'm going to buy a small truck. Maybe a Honda Ridgeline. Well, those are good little trucks. But again, they're more of a unibody. They're not necessarily as rugged and robust. They've also had that 3.5 issue with their engines and some of the rod bearings there. Then you talk about the Nissan Frontier. That's a good unit. And that's one of the best. I still stand by that. The 3.8 liter V6. It has a torque converter auto, has some nice features without going tech overload. The only downside, it has that damn chain-driven water pump that's buried in the engine, and it's costly repair. But outside of that, the Nissan's a good selection, good choice. The Toyota Tacoma, another good choice, but again, they're still toying with, they've had gearbox issues, both the auto and manuals. They've had drivetrain problems, hub-related issues, brakes, assembly, components, failures, quality control. I mean, Toyota's had their issues, and the engine tends to be a little bit buzzy. So it's a good vehicle. There's still some good choices out there. The Maverick has been a popular one because it initially came out in a $20,000 range, but people are now figuring out that as soon as you create a little bit of buzz, people flock to the dealers. Lo and behold, all of a sudden now they jack up prices, and that's what's happened with the Maverick too. So regardless, good vehicle, bad vehicle, there's not a lot of good quality sort of old school brand new vehicles. Cars, mostly CVTs. Mazda's making some nice internal combustion vehicles, both turbos and nons with torque converter autos. That's a great choice there. But what we're looking at, the Hyundais and the Kias, you know, they're transitioning to EVs because their ICE engines, in my opinion and my experience, has been utter trash. With millions of vehicles burning, potentially burning roadside, many have actually had problems and people left on the side of the road watching their car ignite or heard the massive rod knock. It's unfortunate, but people, the consumers, are at the receiving end of some of this junk and the low quality. But as we look every single year, 26 is that next step to the full mandate of electrification. So as initially intended, you're going to see more and more EVs, more and more plug-in hybrids, and until we ultimately hit that end date of 30 and 35 in different respective countries, you're going to see more and more transition to electric vehicles. Now, some of those are going to be discounted, some of them aren't, like my buddy's Mustang Mach-E. But at the end of the day, the research, the development cost to build these EVs, the materials that go into the batteries, even though solid state is something that Toyota's been yakking about for some time, but until it's in there and it's able to hit 600 or 700 miles on a charge, I'm not believing it until I see it. But at the end of the day, you see more and more EVs. But guess what? That design, the manufacturing, the research development costs create an elevated cost structure to build and buy these vehicles. Hence, they're not going to get any cheaper. And even with the idea that a lot of people are saying we need a smaller, lower cost EV, a big reason why they build more expensive EVs is because they can hide it in the luxury appointments. See, that's why vehicle brands like Slate, while they seem like a great idea at the time, what you have now is a truck that is as stripped out as can be, and yet, as soon as you add a steering wheel, a floor mat, now all of a sudden you've crested 30 grand. See, this is what's starting to happen. There's a lot of these manufacturers that are saying all kinds of things, and we're going to see more and more smoke and mirrors in 2026. That's truly what I see. There's going to be more claims, more alleged false claims as well about, price structures that are going to be competitive, reliability's improved here with this new engine, and honestly, the internal combustion vehicles, there's less and certainly even less and less quality ones that won't break apart on you. This is what we're going to continue to see more in 2026. We're going to likely see more increased pricing of new vehicles. Now, that being said, the cost of lending is likely going to continue on. We're going to see probably the lever that the feds are operating with, or the Canadian government is going to operate, are basically, if people aren't buying, they're going to drop interest rates, but I don't see that changing a whole lot. At the end of the day, with the increased cost of these new vehicles, even if the feds drop, say, 2 basis points, you're still going to have people buying cars for an 84-month, 96-month loan term because they can't afford a $60,000, $70,000 vehicle and make it affordable for a monthly payment. This is what we're going to see more and more. We're likely going to see more people taking out leases, short term. I truly believe the leasing structure is going to be more competitive in 26 because now there's less and less people qualifying from the banks. Look at Tricolor. Look at those guys. What happened to them? They're now all wrapped up in the courts with alleged issues and fraud potentials. Because why? Lending money, potentially doubling down on extending the money lending from lending institutions just to keep them afloat. But things haven't been all that good. They've been lending to people that can't normally get loans, maybe people without social insurance numbers, people that maybe don't have absolutely brutal credit scores. They were lending to people that just generally couldn't get conventional loans at a bank. So you're going to see more of these kind of businesses getting flushed out as repossessions start mounting. We're going to see more repos, more of these businesses defaulting. And then once they default, the banks start asking questions. Next thing you know, you're going to have more and more of those kind of stories. You're going to have more repos going up because people can't afford it. And if they want a new vehicle, many more people are going to take those short-term leases on crappy vehicles that aren't selling, like the Volkswagens, the ID4, the ID Buzz aren't selling. So they're going to be sold upon the pretense of aggressive lease tactics. They're going to offer them, very low monthly payment, a bit of a buy-in, and then you can, take that great lease for the next few years. You're going to see more and more of those with vehicles that don't sell, with better lease rates, and that's how it's going to get people into new vehicles. But the idea of purchasing new cars in 2026 looks to be an ongoing continuation and continuing saga of these overpricing gouge. Now, what we're doing ultimately is spacing the buyer out of the market. It is becoming truly more of a buyer's have and have not, but ultimately, if you've got the money, 2026 looks to be a year where less and less people do have the money, and buyers who actually have the cash are going to have more options. See, not more options in the types of vehicles, but more buying options to get incentives and deals. And that's where 2026, you might start to see some better options, better deals there for the consumer. That said, you don't want to buy a new vehicle because you're sick and tired of hearing about all of these EVs. Looking for a used vehicle that's in that 3 to 5 year time frame is going to be an ongoing challenge. You're going to scour the Facebook Marketplace ads. You're going to have to deal with more of these hoodlums and meeting people in dark alleys and take a risk just to look at that used car. So there's going to be more of those weird conversations and weird purchases and discussions about, where's this car been and title washing. And that's going to be a bigger issue, a bigger problem and a challenge that a lot of buyers are going to be looking for when they're shopping for their used cars. Going to look at maybe auctions, open auctions to possibly shop for some used cars. Maybe rebuilding. I mean, look at Matt Armstrong. He basically dominates the space of rebuilding old, beat up, smashed, fun cars, exotic cars, sports cars, whatever. And there's a lot of YouTubers right now specializing in bringing back dead vehicles. And there's going to be more of that. Not just premium cars, but cheap cars too. More and more people are going to take it in their own hands, start rebuilding, fixing, extending the life of their old vehicles. That's why we're starting to see the average age of the vehicles on the road today has grossly changed. When we look at 6 or 7 or 8 years ago, the average age on a vehicle of the vehicle on the road were about 7 or 8 years of age. That was the average, right? Older, newer. There was far more new vehicles on the roads. But as time goes on, high costs of new car purchases, there's this big tidal shift. So we're getting more and more people keeping their old trash, rust, put on those bolt-on plastic fenders from Amazon and cover up some of the rust, put a new starter and a water pump, and you're good for another 100,000 miles. Meantime, less and less people buying new because of the high prices. So 2026 is shaping up to be a new challenging year with big incentives coming likely, but less and less people actually being able to afford them. Probably more EVs, less ICEs, and many more people looking at refixing what they've got. Anyway, I'd like to hear your thoughts down below. Do you have any anticipation what you expect? And what's your plan? Are you planning on buying a new car? Maybe used? Maybe fix what you've got? I'd like to hear your thoughts. Please do drop a line. Don't forget to subscribe. And we'll talk to you real soon, everybody. Bye-bye.